Hey there, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Evoke Greatness. This podcast was created for those of you who, like me, are driven by their curious nature and fascination with the champion mindset. If you have an insatiable hunger for growth and knowledge, or maybe you're just curious on how some of the most successful people have navigated their journey, we share the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, and all the lessons learned along the way. It doesn't matter what chapter you are on in your story. Maybe you're just getting started, or heck, maybe you're halfway through. What I know is where intention goes, energy flows. It's my most sincere hope that you will hear something in one or maybe many of these episodes that resonates with you and reminds you that you are not in this alone. As we venture into year 2, I hope that you find a sense of connection and community when you're here, because we all deserve a place where we belong. My name is Sunny, and I am so glad you're here. If you're new, there's a few things you want to know about me. I am a huge book nerd and a wee bit of a control enthusiast with an obsession for motivational coffee cups. I believe that a rising tide raises all ships, and I invite you along in this journey to evoke greatness. Hey there, friend. I've got an episode today that is going to light a fire under your leadership journey. We are diving deep with Ryan Iwamoto, the co-founder of 24-Hour Home Care, and let me tell you, his story is going to have you asking for more. We are talking real, raw insights on embracing vulnerability, seeking brutally honest feedback, and making those gut-wrenching decisions that can make or break your company. If you've ever felt stuck, wondering how to level up your leadership game or navigate industry curveballs, this episode is your golden ticket. Ryan's got a 5-point plan that'll revolutionize how you approach struggling business units. And trust me, his strategies for building next-level company culture while driving growth, pure gold. So buckle up, because this episode is going to challenge you and inspire you to level up your own leadership. Get your notebooks ready and let's hop right into it. Welcome back to another episode of Evoke Greatness, the podcast where curiosity meets courage and where we deep dive into the stories of those who not only dream big, but dream greatly. Today, I'm thrilled to have a special guest who embodies the absolute spirit of innovation and compassion. Get ready to meet Ryan Iwamoto, the co-founder and visionary behind 24-Hour Home Care, a company that's not only leading, but redefining what it means to care. Under Ryan's leadership, 24-Hour Home Care has soared to impressive heights, landing on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies for 9 consecutive years. That's not it. Ryan was also named Entrepreneur of the Year of Greater Los Angeles by Ernst & Young at the age of 35. And he's crafted a workplace culture that's been celebrated by Fortune as one of the best for aging services and for millennials. So whether you're an entrepreneur at heart, a leader looking to level up, or someone who just loves a good story about beating the odds, you're in the right place. Ryan's journey is a testament to the power of passion paired with purpose, and today he's here to share the highs, the lows, and every lesson in between. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you, Sunny. Wow, that was awesome. That was a great intro, and yeah, couldn't have said it better. Thank you. Great to be here.
My pleasure. I am super excited to have you on. We fortunately got a chance to get to know each other a little bit prior to this. I am just absolutely want to dive right into your story. Knowing that your tenure with Maxim Healthcare paired with your grandmother's experience with Alzheimer's and needing in-home care, that's really what inspired you to co-found 24-Hour Home Care. But that was back in 2008, right? Lots has happened in between then. The world of COVID has come and gone. It's a little bit of a new place. What keeps you here today?
Yeah, so I'll start with just my story. And if you don't know my story starts, I think, really like in college. I was the type that I had no idea what I wanted to do after college. A lot of my friends were already sort of gearing up for law school or business school, or they have their internship lined up for, a big firm. I had no idea what the heck I wanted to do. Actually, there was something I wanted to actually teach English in Japan, and I'm Japanese by heritage. So I thought that would be a good way for me to go to Japan for the first time. I've never been, but I didn't get the job. And it was a sort of rude awakening on what am I going to do? And I ended up going back home and living at home. And my mom was a great inspire for me to just find work and gain some experience and see where that takes you. So that actually led to really my first real job, which was at Maxim Healthcare Services, which I started as a recruiter and learned about the business and learned about the home care industry and really was able to use that lens to see the opportunity that we had in the home. And, to your point, when you brought up around that time, say it was about like 2003, 2004, my grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and we had the challenge of finding really good care for her. Luckily, we did. And that really came in the form of my mom, who really stepped up as a primary caregiver. And we had some caregivers come in to provide some relief. But I've also seen the magic of what home care can do in the home. My grandmother, since she was diagnosed in 2003, up until when she passed in 2019, she lived in her home with my mom as a primary caregiver. And I can look you dead in the eye and tell you that would have not happened if she didn't have someone to help her, and especially my mom. And she lived to be 101 years old before she passed. So again, seeing the magic of what care in the home can provide. And I think having that lens personally, but also the professional lens of working at Maxim, I think those two lenses combined really was a catalyst to start 24-hour home care. And my partner, David Allerby, who's actually CEO, I'm president and co-founder, he had a similar experience with his grandmother, and we cared for her when we're at Maxim. And so he saw that personal lens. So I think, I don't know, in this industry, you got to really feel the passion and purpose for it to really work. It can't just be about the business side. So I think that really helped us shape who we are today. And then to your question on what keeps me here, my grandmother's been my why for many, many years. And I think now that our company has sort of gone through different chapters and phases, like I would say my why now is really to like take everything I've learned and give it all away to everyone else. And whether that's people that I manage or companies that have come on board that we've acquired, to really help and teach them to scale and grow as not just a company, but also as a leader in this industry. So that is really what keeps me going. And it really fuels a lot of the passion that I have today of what we do.
That segues perfect into what my next question is, which is around the evolution of leadership. Oftentimes when we first come into leadership or we first come into these big roles where we're stepping into the big ideas and breathing life into them, we're a very different person at that point in time. And so I'm curious, just in your look back of leadership, what could the current version of Ryan share with that Ryan 1.0?
Yeah, no, I've been thinking about that a lot. And the Ryan that started 24 Home Care is very different than who I am today. And my team will definitely validate that, especially the ones that have been with us through this journey. So I think in the beginning, chapter 1 was really about, being the scrappy entrepreneur. And, I always thought that leadership was about leading from the front, leading by example, being the hardest working person in the room, and really having no weaknesses or vulnerabilities, or at least not showing that, because I wanted to show that I'm a strong leader. And that's what I thought leadership was about. And it worked. It worked for probably good 4 or 5 years into the business, because I feel like as an entrepreneur, you need to have the grit, you need to work hard, you need to outwork everyone else that's in your industry. And that's what I did. But then you get to a certain point where that skill set that got you where you are is not the same skill set that's going to get you to where you need to be, right? As you get bigger and bigger, there's only so much time in the day. So you can't continue to just outwork. So you got to really change the mindset. And I think one of the biggest learning lessons is really going from scratching entrepreneur to leader of teams and building great teams, and building the next leaders within your team becomes vastly important, more important than your skill set, than your ideas that you sort of got you or made you successful as an entrepreneur. So I think one of the eye openers for me was, so I work with a coach. I'm a big believer in coaches, and my coach mentioned or did a 360-degree feedback survey on the closest individuals that I work with. And I got the good, and I got the bad, and I got the ugly. And I have not done that. Like, this is the first time doing it. And it was sort of like hypocritical because we're always about giving feedback to our employees and doing performance reviews, annual reviews. So we would always do that as a company and culture, but never did it for ourselves. Right. And like, why we still need to improve as well. And we need to get the feedback. So the 360 was a really big eye opener for me. One, we also don't really tend to get good feedback either, other than like, hey, good job, nice job. Hey, way to handle that. Like, that's some of the feedback you get as a leader. But to really get meaningful, thoughtful, genuine feedback on the positive side, it was a breath of fresh air for me as well. Like, I was on cloud nine for a couple of weeks, but the constructive feedback was something that it was an eye opener for me. So, some of the things that I thought were skill sets ended up also being a detriment. So for example, one of the great feedbacks that I received was Ryan is extremely hard worker, right? And I like wore that with a badge of honor, and I was like, yes, I'm glad that I heard that. But then the downside of that, and we saw it in our sort of constructive feedback, was that he does work hard, but like it almost sets like this unrealistic expectation for his team to do that as well. And I would work on the weekends and I would send emails out on the weekends. And like, even though I didn't need to hear a response on the weekend, like when you're a leader, you are whispering through a megaphone. So no matter what you say, people are going to be on edge. So people would get burnt out around trying to sort of follow in my footsteps. So I've learned a lot to slow down a bit and be more intentional on how I present myself in terms of how I work. But also like, why am I also working so hard? Right? Is it my comfort zone to do that? Because that was my identity as a leader. But then I started to realize it's probably because I can't delegate very well. And I think that was a learning lesson of like, okay, I got to let go of some of these things and trust others to do it better. And I think that is the gift and curse of an entrepreneur is you're so used to owning and running and driving things, and to let go of it, it's hard. So that's been sort of my journey over the last probably 5 years, is really letting go and letting the next set of folks take over and honestly do it better than me, which they have. And that is how you grow, and that's how you scale.
And I think when you start getting really introspective on your own leadership and being willing to lean in and entertain, not just entertain, explore that constructive feedback, that can completely shift how you're showing up. And then that spills out into those around you, those working closest to you.
Absolutely.
And so I'm curious, how do you combine, when we think about culture, and your company has been praised for having really great culture, how do you combine cultivating culture with challenging your team to grow beyond their comfort zones? And what has that yielded you as an organization?
Yeah. So one thing I want to share, it sort of falls up on the 360 was, they say when you're trying to accomplish a goal, the best thing to do is like put it out there so that people can hold you accountable. Tell a friend or tell your coach or tell your colleagues. I did take that a step further. So I put all of my constructive feedback on LinkedIn. So there's a post like, I think it's like back in like maybe 2021, where it has all my negative feedback. Cause like, if I want to improve and be accountable for improving off of this, I want to put it out there so the whole world can see. And with that, it really held me accountable. But what I didn't think it would do is it actually inspired others in the organization to do something similar. Not necessarily posting their challenges or the feedback on LinkedIn, but just really being open about doing 360s and being reflective on that. So I think a lot of it is lead by example, right? When I don't show vulnerability, I don't show weakness, I'm always about working hard. That is what your team is going to be sort of thinking is what success is to me in regards to them. So I think really setting the tone first. And I think also like calling it out. One of the principles that we have at 24 is improve always. So this principle it's on our walls. It's part of our meetings that we do. We always highlight it. It's just common language within the organization. But I think not only just have it on the walls, but like, how do you infuse that into your culture? And then it goes to lead by example and really making sure that we are stepping out of our comfort zones. And that stuff is things that are praised in the organization, not put down. I'll give you another example about just elevating our culture, improving always. We're always about, hey, like, bring more to the table. Like, we want you to go learn more. But I always felt that it was a little, again, hypocritical that we never did it ourselves or at the leadership team. So one of the things that I want to do to put myself out there was I actually signed up for a executive education program at Harvard Business School and really put myself out there to be around these really successful individuals and learn from them. And it was very nerve-wracking going into it, but I've learned a ton and obviously made some really great connections along the way. But that inspired others to say, hey, well, Ryan's doing it. Like, I want to go out and like learn more. And I think that has really helped create this culture of like getting out of your comfort zone. And yeah, I'm a big believer in like sucking at something new. And that is where you grow, right? That is where the growth happens, is once you step out of the comfort zone.
Yeah. And being willing to. I think that's the biggest piece. In success, it's like the Instagram highlight reel is, in order to be successful, you have to be gritty and you have to work long hours and hustle and grind and all of those things. Right. And while at some point in time, that's probably true, right? Those scrappy times when you're starting up, those will allow you to either get there or not. Those will allow you to push through the really hard times and the times where you're like, oh, I'm not sure the money's going to last from this point to this point. And so I think that does serve you. But I think as you garner more and more success, I think it's really about being willing to say, okay, if I'm at 2.0 now and I want to get to level 3.0, what does that mean? It means I'm not going to be great when I first step my foot into there, but I'm willing to be bad at something for long enough to get good and then great at it.
That's right. Said it best. And I would add to this too is hire a coach.
Yeah.
I think one of my biggest learning lessons is hiring experts that can help you along the way to get there faster and probably at a lower cost too, because you probably spend a lot of your time and energy to learn something. So yeah, I mean, I love the concept of coaching. I have an executive coach that we work with. We also work with a coach that works more at the leadership level. Personally, I have a personal trainer and I also have a nutritionist. Really, at the end of the day, it's about someone that I can go to be a sounding board on how can I do this faster and more effectively. And the other part of it is like, they can also hold you accountable to make sure that you are executing on all the goals that you want. So I found a lot of value surrounding myself with people that can hold me accountable, and it's helped me a whole lot along the way. And that's probably another learning lesson that I'd share is hire someone that's better than you or an expert and help them coach you along the way. It's been very effective for me.
I love what you said, that it will cost you more, because that's sometimes what trips people up is, oh, do I really want to make that investment? And when you think of it comparatively, you just mentioned it, is what is it costing you to maybe be spinning in circles versus being crystal clear and having that path and that vision forward? There's a lot to be gained out of that when you think about the investment side of things.
Absolutely. Just to add to that too, I've heard somewhere on LinkedIn or a podcast, but someone once said the biggest cost to a business, and I think you can also apply this individually, and also probably a sort of barrier to growth, is what they called ignorance debt. And that's what you don't know, right?
Oh,
and that's going to be the biggest cost to you. So if you can find someone that can help pay down that, quote unquote debt faster, that's going to launch whatever goal that you want. It's going to accelerate you to get to the goal much faster. So when I think about with our own business, we've made a lot of acquisitions, bringing in organizations where their founder is still on board and they're still running the organization. And one of the goals that we have and share with them, like some of the things that we can bring to the table, is to help you pay down that debt of what you don't know, and everything that you wanted to accomplish in 10 years with your goals, with our experience, with our knowledge, with our failures and learning lessons, can we apply that and maybe you can accomplish it in 3 years? And really that's what we're selling in our partnership, is we can help you do that. And I think the same thing applies to coach, right? When you accomplish what you want to accomplish in 10 years with a coach, probably more likely you can do it much faster.
Well, one of my favorite questions to ask people is around those painful lessons. I think this is where so much insight comes from, this where so much of us actually become really shaped kind of in the fire. When we think about powerful lessons, those don't come from the mountaintops. They usually come from like the cold, dark valley. And it's where we've scraped our knees and fallen down, but it's that power in getting back up. And so I'm curious when it comes to something that felt like a perceived failure in the moment, and on the other side of it, you felt like, wow, this actually really shaped me as a person. Do you have an experience or a story like that?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Epic stories usually come with epic challenges
Right.
and epic villains, right? The movies that we watch aren't always about just the mountaintops. There's always some sort of drama or climax. So I totally agree with that. And yes, there has been definitely the values. And I feel like that has shaped who I am today. I would say probably the most recent valley for me was just really going through COVID. As I'm sure this applied to a lot of people, but with COVID, so our business, we have two lines of business. We were doing private pay home care, non-medical caregiving services. And then we also had an IDD business, which is working with children and adults with developmental disabilities. That was state funded. Our private pay business, which is what that was our core business. That's what we sort of started the company on, it tanked. I think overnight we dropped about 30 to 40% in our hours. And I guess you can sort of equate that to revenue as well. Fortunately, on our IDD side of the business, it actually did well because a lot of the funding that was going outside of the home was then directed to the home. So we benefited off of this. But our core business, the one that we started, our legacy business, was just going downhill. And every single day you would see the hours just continue to decline. So the way that we were set up in 2020 and even before that was I oversaw the sales, business development, and marketing of our organization. Didn't really matter which division, whether it was private pay or IDD, like that was like what I owned. And my partner, David, oversaw the more the operations, accounting, finance side of things, again, across both divisions. But when something's going really wrong or going down, fingers start to get pointed. And I think it really calls for just to have one central leader to sort of unite everyone. And we didn't have that. And that was some feedback that we received is like Ryan's kind of giving direction in one way about sales, and then operations were getting a different direction. So there's like no unity in like the strategy or path that we were trying to do with our private pay business. So that was 2020. In 2021, I like pretty much talked to David and our executive team is like, hey, we need a single leader in that organization. And I put my hand up to say, hey, let me try it. Let me run it. Let me unite all the different departments and see what we can do to like just get this division back up and running. I did that for 2 years and it was the hardest era in my career. There's nothing harder than seeing your team put in all this blood, sweat, tears, really talented individuals putting in all this effort. And every single day it just continues to decline. I mean, we would have our ups and downs, but mostly if you zoomed out, we were just going down and our culture was really deteriorating. We measure it through EMPS. And I think at our worst, we were like a negative 14 EMPS. And that was just heartbreaking to see that because typically we would pride ourselves on a good culture. And I wanted to really turn that around. I think the first thing is like, we got to get everyone bought in and aligned on where we're going. So really came up with like kind of this like 5-point plan on how we're going to do this. So one, it was, what is our North Star? What do we want to do? What's our goal and our focus for these next couple of years, right? So define that. Two, what is going to be our strategy on how we're going to get there? We didn't really have a strategy. Our strategy was always like, say yes, take on all the business and do a good job and outbeat everyone else. So, but like, how do we really define a strategy? Because in my mind, strategy is like, where do you direct your resources that is going to have the best ROI for the organization? And right now, the resources were just spread across with no intention. So that was number two. And number three was about doing hard things Like we never really focused on making some tough decisions, and we made tough decisions. We shut down certain locations that just weren't winning. And we wanted to invest some of those resources into places that were winning. So we did that. And we like historically never shut down any locations. Like that was like, oh, we don't want to do that because it's going to also show vulnerability and we're not growing. But at the end of the day, we had to make these calls for the better of the business. So that was a very vulnerable moment to say, hey, you know what? Our Dallas location just not working. We're going to shut it down and deploy those resources elsewhere. Number 4 was really redefining what our values are. That's going to be important for this team, this culture. So, we created our principles, but even beyond the principles, I created what I call the 5-pillar pledge. And I had the team pledge on these sort of principles that I had for the private pay. I won't go over all of them, but one of them was, I will say nothing about you that I haven't said to you. So there were a lot of finger pointing as things happen, like things like that happen when you're not doing well and when you're not winning. So a lot of just people talking about other departments, but they're not saying it to them. They're saying it behind closed doors, behind their back. We would have meetings and talk about things. And then afterwards, people would be chatting after, on Teams and saying things differently. So I felt like if we're going to have constructive talk about each other, we're going to have to say that to each other and support each other and be good truth tellers and good truth receivers for that. And then the 5th one was just really making sure we had the right talent on board. So we did have to make some tough calls about letting people go. And like, we never had a layoff because it was just not part of who we were and feel like that was the right thing to do. But sometimes that is the right thing to do when the business is not going to survive.
Right.
And the whole ship is going to go down. So we made a tough call to reduce our workforce. And that was a first for us. And that was really, really hard for us in the culture. But the end result was, now our private pay never really came back, but I think it allowed the team to create some sort of sustainability, and an opportunity presented itself, which we were ready for. So Medicaid in California opened up and there was more funding to it. And we pivoted that infrastructure to support that line of business. And now that is taken off really well. And one of my greatest feats that I like to share in my career was, at the worst, we were at a negative 14 EMPS. And when I handed off the reins to the now president, Simon Close, our EMPS was at 29, which was like just right at like good. And Simon is taking it to a whole nother level. But that was one of the like more meaningful accomplishments that I've had, is taking something that's you're not winning, but you're getting people on board with a mission and a lot of purpose, and seeing that culture change from there. That was probably some of the things that I think it's shaped who I am today.
Anytime, like I think so many people, so many businesses went through that, especially with COVID, especially in the healthcare side of the world.
That's right.
And when you think about the ability to step back and stay open to like, how the heck can we pivot this to capitalize where we can capitalize, stay true to the mission of caring for people the best way we can. And then the courage, I think, to like actually step forward and start executing on it. Like, this could not work. There's always going to be that opportunity for something to not work. But if you don't have the courage to step into it and even try, I mean, then it's really all for nothing.
That is right.
Don't hate me. Don't hate me. But I had to stop midway through this episode and let you know that I am committed to honoring my word in keeping these episodes shorter. So when we've got fantastically meaty episodes like this that may go on a little longer, I'm going to split them in half. And so you're going to get part 1 this week and part 2 next week. Let me tell you that we are just getting started. Like, we are just getting started. Ryan shares so much gold in part 2 that you are not going to want to miss. He shares a book or piece of advice that fundamentally changed his perspective on leadership and life. He talks about what he thinks are going to be the biggest disruptors within the home care space and what his non-negotiable routines are that make him as successful as he is. You are not going to want to miss it. Make sure you check back next week. Thank you so much for listening and for being here on this journey with me. I hope you'll stick around. If you liked this episode, it would mean the world for me if you would rate and review the podcast or share it with someone you know may need to hear this message. I love to hear from you all and want you to know that you can leave me a voicemail directly. If you go to my website, evokegreatness.com, and go to the Contact Me tab, you'll just hit the big old orange button and record your message. I love the feedback and comments that I've been getting, so please keep them coming. I'll leave you with the wise words of author Robin Sharma. Greatness comes by doing a few small and smart things each and every day. It comes from taking little steps consistently. It comes from making a few small chips against everything in your professional and personal life that is ordinary, so that a day eventually arrives when all that's left is the extraordinary.